Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Devika from QAI, your co-host for the webinar. I welcome you all to the webinar Post-COVID-19 Perspective on the Agile Way of Working by Arijit Sarbagna. Trained by Dr. Jeff Sutherland himself, he's a Scrum at Scale trainer and an LSD licensed Scrum trainer fellow. Currently, he's playing the role of practice head for both Agile DevOps and mobile development streams for a global IT solutions company. Now, let me take you guys through a brief introduction of QAI. QAI is a 25 plus years transnational global advisory, consultancy, and workforce development organization that enables and promotes operational excellence and is a pioneer in the field. Established in Orlando, USA in 1980 by William Perry, QAI now has offices across the globe and has been at the forefront of India's quality journey. We've conducted assignments in 35 plus countries for 400 plus consulting customers and engaged with 50 plus ministries, departments, and governments. QAI's Agile COE was set up in 2014, bringing with it QAI's training and consulting expertise of over 20 years. We've partnered with the best in the industry to provide our clients with a portfolio of quality services. Over these 6 years, we've built up a set of 40 plus training curriculums, conducted 200 plus programs for clients across the globe. Our COE provides coaching and mentoring support of Agile experience specialists and coaches to support our clients. Now, before we get started, a couple of things. One, we will take the Q&A session in a different way. In this session, it won't be through the chat window or the questions window option in the GoToWebinar. Arijit will take you through how we're going to facilitate that today. And for the feedback and also during the webinar, we'll have a couple of live polls that will be enabled on your screen, which you can vote on the screen itself. All right, that's it. Thanks again, everyone, for joining in. And over to you, Arijit.
Thank you so much, Devika. So very good morning, afternoon from wherever you are. But I do hope that most of the people are from India. So good afternoon to you all. Post COVID-19, though we are still not in the post phase, we are still running through the current phase. We will try and hopefully get some perspective what it could be in the post era, because we are already dealing with it. Now, as we start, some of the ground rules. Do ask questions when you have one. We will prefer one conversation at a time, but because the system is such, we are letting people post their questions. It could be multiple at a time as well, and we will get to see how you can do that. Please feel free to participate actively. We will respect each other's opinion, have fun, and recognize that we may not agree to everything what each and every one of us have to say, but everyone is entitled to their own perspective. Now, this is the way we are going to have our questions asked or the discussion points raised. Please pick out your mobile phone, scan this QR code, or you can simply type the URL as given at the end of the screen. And this should take you to a particular page. If you're running through the QR code, it will actually auto-populate the page with the code itself, and it will give you a screen through which in this screen, you will find there is a drop down, and in the drop down, you can either select it as a question or you can select it as a discussion point. And as you do so, what would happen is you will come down to a screen, something like this. If you have posted any question, it will appear over here. If you have posted anything as a discussion point, it will appear over here. And true to the spirit of Scrum, if we have answered any questions, we will move it to the answered column. And if we have already done any discussion, then again, we will have it move to the answered column itself. So back to the screen. I hope we have managed to take this QR code. So I will just pause for a while so that we have time to run through this. And then we will move on to the next one. Now, as we move to the next slide, these are nothing but few assumptions that we are probably aware of what Scrum is, what is Dev, what is Ops, what are the fundamentals of DevOps, and some ideas at the corner that it will make sense that if we have an open mind, because as the smart people say, that mind and parachute, they work best when they are open. Some of the disclaimer that all characters, because we are going to talk about few characters as we proceed, and events depicted in this presentation are entirely fictitious. Any similarity to actual events or persons living or dead is purely coincidental. We will be exploring few of practical situations that has hit us hard, but we don't intend. That is not intent because we really don't want to debate an endless loop to find the perfect solution. Rather, we will try to share perceptions and learn from each other. What is the agenda? So from the agenda point of view, I will give a quick introduction. Then we are simply going to touch upon two areas: COVID-19 impact and the changes from two perspectives. One on the social front and the other is the agile way of working. And while doing so, we will run through a quick run through on the Agile Manifesto. And definitely there will be Q&A. Now, talking about introduction, as Devika has already mentioned, that is my name and that is me prior to the lockdown. And this is my consulting experience. Been through few countries, had the pleasure of getting to know different people from different locations, a lot of cultures. Over the period of time, have done few certifications. In my Scrum journey around 2001, I was not familiar that any certifications were there available during that time. So formally did my certification around in 2008 and kept on learning in the process. Though I'm not exactly a certificate fanatic kind of a person, but in the course of time, got a few. And thankfully to Jeff, got an opportunity to learn from him directly. And in the process also have become an LST fellow. So LST is a licensed Scrum trainer. Now let us see what is the COVID-19 impact. Now, before we jump into the COVID-19 impact, let us ask you a question. Did COVID-19 change your professional work? So let me put this question in this way. As a professional, are you doing new work as part of your day-to-day activities? So I'm saying that as a professional. So for example, for me, as a professional may not mean that, okay, I'm also cooking nowadays because that is not exactly my part of the profession that I do. But whatever I do as my IT professional job on a day-to-day basis, has anything changed? Or is there something I am doing as it has always been even before COVID was there? We will run through this poll and we will take a few seconds probably because it is simple yes or no for us to understand. And then we'll move on. But just take a minute to see that whether it has really impacted or created something new for us or not. The kind of work that we have been doing, has it really changed? Kind of activities that we were doing, has it really changed? If I was a Java developer, have I been asked to do .NET nowadays? Or am I still doing Java development? Probably I'm doing something as a new framework, but that would have been there anyways. Think around those and let us see how it stands. Now, when we move to the COVID-19 impact, let us see what is this impact, how it has impacted, and when it has impacted. Think about it. Give it a pause.
So we will just take a moment to get the poll results in. So you all have around 30 seconds to vote. Okay, the last 5 seconds. All right, the poll is closing now and the results are on the screen.
Okay. So hopefully when we were running through the poll, we also got some time to think about what was the COVID-19 impact on us. Now, the picture is pretty familiar and probably when we ask people to think about the impact, this is what we will get to see, that every people are supposed to have their own perception about it. Nothing wrong with that because there is no hard and fast rule that it has to be right in this way only. So every people are at the liberty of thinking what is the impact, but we will try and see in spite of the negative impacts, because every day we get to hear that so many people are infected, so many people probably are in serious condition and all, let us also try to think the other way around. What has been the positive impact? Think about it. Openness. You must have been using this application. Even if you have not been using, if you start using it, you will see that this application gives you a self-assessment. Now, the self-assessment is in a way which creates an openness. It's a kind of transparency which is brought in where we are giving answers to some preset questions and we are being open about it. We are not hiding anything over there. Being open, we are sharing the data which would have otherwise not been possible. So that is what the openness has come in into this COVID-19 state as of now. So that is the social status. Think about the respect part of it. Now, of course, we are supposed to be respecting, as per the picture denotes, we are supposed to be respecting the doctors, the healthcare workers, the frontline workers. COVID-19 has kind of literally forced us to take care of the elderly. So we are making sure that they are safe. They should not be stepping out in this kind of circumstances. We are supposed to be taking care of each other. So by staying home or being indoors, we are not only protecting ourselves, but we are also helping others. But has it always been the case, or is it because COVID-19 has probably forced us to think in these lines? Moving forward, what do you think about the courage? Think about it. People are no longer working in silos. We are all together in this. And as we are working all together, we really don't worry about what class that individual belongs, which religion that person comes to, who is from where. End of the day, we are all as one team and we are in this together. So a team standing, not an individual. And as the saying goes, one for all and all for one. So that is the true spirit which we get to see. Think about the focus part of it. Do we really get to focus when we don't have a goal? And when we talk about Scrum for the matter, you see that there is something called a sprint goal where product owner comes in and he sets a goal, he or she sets a goal, and we are literally driven by the goal. So when the why matters more than the what, then we automatically stay focused. Once the information is clear about for whom we are building it, why and how the people are going to use it, from whatever we are delivering, that outcome is going to impact the end users, then we stay focused and nothing can really push us from that focused way of working. And on these lines, probably you can also link what Simon Sinek has told about his golden circle, where why comes first. Think about the commitment part of it. What is commitment? If we have commitment means we have a defined purpose. We take pride in what we do. And this picture is kind of in today's world that the person is probably pre-COVID situation. If he would have gone and said someone, you know what, I make soap, probably the other person would have said, oh, what's the big deal about it? But that person takes a lot of pride. And in today's situation, we have understood to re-evaluate that same answer or statement, that when that person says, I make soap for India, we feel proud that, wow, you are doing such a wonderful job. So think about it. When was the last time we felt proud about what we do? Is there something linked with, if you have been through the Dan Pink's video, autonomy, mastery, and purpose? Probably there is a link between these. So if we take all these components together, and if we try to put them as a summary, these were all the good impacts. But overall, at a larger scale, what we have got to see is working culture has really been a key change. So it has been work from home, which has become the standard, and probably it will remain the standard going forward for a long time. In fact, Twitter announced that few of their employees are going to be working from home indefinitely. And probably many of the other organizations are going to follow the same. For example, TCS, they have also announced something in the same line. Global economy goes without saying, literally shaken. Business continuity plan, literally broken. People are actually asking themselves why we never really thought about this kind of a situation. industrial domains, they are literally entangled. Think about it. Travel, automobile, airlines, clothing, all this industry are going for such a big change. For example, in my neighborhood, there is a Maruti car dealer, and not to do with Maruti in particular, any car dealer for the matter. They have totally changed their business model from being a car dealer and a servicing house. They have literally started selling personal protection equipments now, and they are doing it through WhatsApp. They are doing it through online microsites. So entire domain has shifted. Leadership is really asking themselves the question: Where are we really ready for it? So what has this caused is it has created a new future path for us, which we literally call the 3 Rs. It is like we have to respond, we have to recover, and we have to rise to the occasion. And that is the only way we can move forward. Now, you must be wondering that we started this discussion about post-COVID situation in agile way of work, but how come we are talking about all the other activities and not talking about agile? So if we bring in agile, you must be familiar that Scrum creates a value-driven culture. And if we talk about the value, the first thing that comes is openness, respect, courage, focus, commitment. Now, if you just go back to the slides we have just been through, talking about all the positive sides of the COVID impact, these were the same things that we have just spoken about. So what does this mean? If we can summarize the social impact, what will you see? Some of the changes were enforced upon us. We didn't have cars, so we actually had to walk more. Good for health, no pollution, no partying. People were forced to be sober, unfortunately for some. Many were back to basics, so we were forced to maintain the hygiene, forced to have home cooked food. We were breathing fresh air after a long time. Some cases we had reinforcement of value-driven culture, the openness, respect, courage, focus, and commitment. Now, I am not trying to say that Scrum is driving the social values, but what I'm trying to say is the social values were already built into Scrum, and Scrum on its own were not as a silver bullet. It was not supposed to solve a problem just being there. It was taking cues from what we have been doing as good practices, and it was built around that. And COVID-19 probably has pointed out to the same values once again. Now, let us go for a different poll. Prior poll, we had asked you a question that is there anything new in your day-to-day work? But this time we are asking this question as a professional, are you doing your professional work in a newer way than how you used to do earlier? So that means that probably I'm a Java developer. Earlier, I used to work with a team sitting all together, but probably nowadays that is not possible. So I am probably thinking in something different, something new, the means of which I am being able to do the same work which I was doing earlier. So what would that be? So take a moment, think about it. And once you are done, also use this to pose any questions if you may have.
Last 5 seconds for the poll. And the results are on the screen.
Okay. So I hope we are having questions. If not, good for me anyway. So moving on, let us see what has been the impact on the agile way of working. So what would you think? Now, whenever we are talking about agile, generally the first thing that comes to our mind is agile is linked to software probably. So if it is linked to software, in that case, how does it actually impact? Does it really impact the life cycle? Does it impact development? Does it impact testing? How does it go? What would be your thought? Do you really think it has anything to do with that? Now, I should be giving you the disclaimer that Agile is applicable across the domain boundary, so it is not limited to IT. But for the sake of this discussion, we are just considering the IT boundary for now. So use that same forum, the QR code, to raise your question. We are going to discuss it. But as you raise your questions and as you think about it, also I would suggest think about personas. So think that you have a development team. And as a development team, we have multiple members in this development team. Now, let us create some personas around it. Vishal, he's single, he stays as a PG, and he's in Pune, he's a Java developer. Jatin, who just relocated from Bangalore with family, and he is a project manager. You have Divya, she stays with her family at Mumbai, but she needs to take care of elderly parents, and she plays the role of tech lead. You have Shakib, who is recently married, and wife is also working with an MNC and stay at Pune. And Shakib is the testing lead. And there we also have an onshore member, Lisa. She is at Florida and she is a Java developer. Now, why I'm requesting you to think with a persona is consider the fact that Vishal, being single and staying at a PG, he has to ensure that he gets the food early in the morning because he has to arrange for his own meals. He has to probably arrange and cook his own food. No one else is there to help him out. Jatin, though he's a senior person and he has the support from his family, he has just relocated to a new city. Probably he hasn't yet got all the furnitures in place. So he is also having his own struggle. Divya, she has to take care of her family, and being the tech lead, she also has to get in sync with all the development members. So she has to talk to Shakib on the testing aspect. She needs to get in touch with Vishal. She has to talk to Lisa. But Lisa is on a totally different time zone, so she probably have to stay back late or stay awake late to be in touch. But she has her elderly parents to take care for. She probably won't find it very comfortable to stay late and take the call. So it is a different set of challenges for her. In this kind of a situation, how would you think that this work can still continue the way it used to work before? That is where we request you that you share your thoughts, what we would like to discuss as we move to that discussion board later on. Now, let us proceed that what is this typical SDLC flow? Now, of course, you all know this. Now, moving from the SDLC flow, let us take the picture of Scrum or the Agile way of working. Now, this is a very familiar diagram. We all know this. So it starts with the product owner creating a product backlog, then it goes to the team working together, sprint planning, 2 parts. There is a sprint backlog, then 1 to 4 weeks of iteration, then product backlog refinement, daily scrum, then there is a review and potentially shippable product increment goes out and retro. No brainer, right? We have been through this so many times. What is the manifesto? So the manifesto, and we should highlight the fact this is the manifesto for agile software development. And as the manifesto, you're all aware, I'm not going to read it out. Now, out of all the elements which are there on the left, on which we value more, last 3, they sound pretty good even in the current standards. But is individual interaction really working that great? Let us see. So we just went through this picture and let us see what COVID has created. First impact is on the team. So we had all the different members in this team working together at office. Now these team members are all working from home. All the members are at their own islands. So everyone is sitting separately, everyone is working separately. One person doesn't know what is happening with the other person at the other corner. Scrum Master, the poor fellow, he or she is probably in a desert, all left alone and looking for a way out. We have a situation where all our plannings are going to be through virtual conferences. So video conferences is only mode. Daily Scrum, again through a video conference only. Sprint duration. Now, we typically say 1 to 4 weeks, but this challenge is with so many things which are not in front of us, if we let this happen for a longer duration, probably we are inviting more and more risk. How do we cut it short? So probably one option would be we reduce the timeline from 1 to 4 weeks, we make it to 1 to 2 weeks. If it comes down to 1 to 2 weeks, automatically it will impact all the associated events. So my sprint planning will get impacted, my retrospect, my review, all will automatically come down. Similarly, my backlog refinement timing, that should also come down. Now, if all these elements are now being spread out like this, where my team members are all isolated, Scrum Master is also isolated, timelines are all getting changed, probably shorter for the better. What do you think would be the position for the leaders? Do you think the leadership should also change their perception about teams? So let us run through another poll. Let us see what we think that how should the leaders act? Do you think that post-COVID work culture demands a changed attitude from the leadership? And if you get a chance, do post your thoughts that what kind of change would you expect from the leadership? That will be something we would really want to see. Take your time.
Okay, another 10 seconds for the poll. And the poll is shutting in 3, 2, 1. Results are on the screen.
Now let us see what has been the real scenario for us. I mean, probably not for all, but for many. If we really look into the ground reality, we have a lot of dependency on the tools. So if a developer is working on something, the developer would say, it is working fine. And people who are familiar with DevOps, they will say, we really see day in, day out, and that is why we are following DevOps so closely. The developer will say, everything is working fine in my system. I am not going to count it as a defect, but the manager will say, you know what, we are not going to deliver your machine to client, so you better fix it. But the COVID situation has created like this. Now the developer is not right in front of the manager, so the manager can not literally come to the developer's cabin and scream at the poor developer. Even the manager is now in a different island altogether. So what is bound to happen? So under this situation, we are totally dependent on the infrastructure, and more focus is going on cloud. So probably cloud is going to be the de facto standard for us. And when you move for the cloud infrastructure, developer sitting in whatever location, the developer he or she would make a code change. And once the developer commits the code, in whichever location the manager is, manager will also get to see it, but from a distance. So in a way, we are saving the developer, right? Now, the good part with this is definitely there are going to be a lot of DevOps buzz. I mean, it was already there, and that buzz is going to increase even further. Reality is what it simply means is a lot of organizations which were probably not focused on application modernization, they are now going to focus on moving their application to the modern cloud landscape. So a lot of push for the cloud or the cloudification. More and more organizations are going to jump into it. And many organizations like what we do also as well, we help customers to move into the cloud era, the cloud sphere. Another big change from the way of leadership is we expect to see a lot of camaraderie and a lot of empathy. Empathy is plus plus because we want to see it even more. Because when people are so distributed, people really are having no clue what the other person is going through, we have to have this empathy. I will just give you one simple example. Right now in Calcutta, one of my team members who is stuck due to the COVID situation in a red zone, He's also out of network because where he stays, in that location, there has been a network outage and he's literally cut off from the grid. Now, if I am his manager and if I keep on screaming at him, why don't I see you online without even trying to understand what the ground reality is, it won't at all make sense. So we have to show that empathy and we have to bring it on the ground. Now, how does the agile framework fit into this kind of a picture? Some of the frameworks have really taken this matter very seriously. I really take pride in associating myself with Scrum at Scale, where Scrum at Scale has really taken this one notch ahead of others. And they have, on the website itself, they have put it like this, that together we can weather any storm. Now, disruption being inevitable, to successfully navigate 2020, we have to be agile. And the important part is all the different frameworks, they have really come up to this fight and they have taken the measure towards responding to this unpredictable situation. Now, definitely the lightweight frameworks, for example, Scrum at Scale has got the edge because it has been able to move very quickly into a online or a virtual system. Now, for the other few of the other frameworks, we had a lot of emphasis on big room planning. They had a struggle, but they too have managed to move into an online, and that shows that not only the people who are dealing it on the ground on a day-to-day basis, but the people who are the creator of this framework, they are also adapting to these changing circumstances. Now let us go back to the Agile Manifesto. So we spoke about the manifesto, we know about all these things. So what we are saying is now, firstly, I am definitely not in the position to say anything about the manifesto. So all these smart people who wrote the manifesto, they are the right authority. But this is just my perception. Individual interaction, probably not over process and tools, but probably it will make sense that with process and tools. And if we just make a step further, and if we also bring in an additional manifesto, probably an flyer along with it, a takeaway on the leadership, probably we will say that servant leadership over command and control, vision and guidance and instructions and monitoring, customer collaboration over team commitment negotiation. So my team says this story is going to be an 8-pointer and management says, no, and that is a 3-pointer. So let us not do that. Responding to change rather than enforcing a plan or enforcing a change. That is, there is value on the items on the left, and we should trust mature teams to handle the items on the right. Saying that, if you have any questions, please feel free to pose your questions again on the same, using the same QR code. And for the Q&A, we are now open. Now, just the caveat, I did say that I am going to take questions, but I never say that I am going to answer them. Now, what I would do is, let me also share what we have got over here so far. If you can see my screen, I will try and zoom. So questions. So I will just try and go through the questions first. Collaboration is key to agile. People working remotely would be a challenge. Of course, it would be a challenge. So in order to face the challenge, we are adapting to newer ways of working. So that is what we have seen, that people are working on different isolated islands, but they are connected through different virtual platforms. So Microsoft Teams, Zoom, even the schools are nowadays opting for different platforms like Google Classroom and all, through which we are ensuring that all the communication still flow the way it was. So I hope that answers. We have had distributed models, but to this extent, when almost no one is under the same roof, that is very true. I mean, we have always spoken about it, even in when COVID was nowhere in the picture, we spoke about distributed teams. Interestingly, in today's world, all the organizations which were earlier talking about a distributed team, now they are putting a particular request in their RFPs that we should have this kind of a situation where, even if required, teams should be able to work in a totally distributed island formation. Now, I will take a good example that when we go through the licensed Scrum Master or licensed Scrum Product Owner training, this is one of the examples we take. And interestingly, these examples we actually took even before the COVID situation came up. That how do you segregate your teams when you have some of the members who are partly located in one location and partly located in another, and there are some floating members who don't have a defined location to work. So even in that kind of a situation, the best practice is always that you club together the floating people and let the different silos work as individual teams. And now here what has happened is due to COVID, all the members of the team are really the floating members. So for them to come together and work together is relatively easy because they are not going to miss that water cooler conversation because they are all separated out. So they will feel that they are not missing out. They're all into this together. So that way it creates a harmony across the team and they can all work together. So I'm moving it, but if you feel that the questions are not answered, then please feel free to add them. There is a question that leadership change. Yes, mutual trust, autonomous team, more automation, absolutely. And I think that is the precise points we went through. So I hope that we are thinking in same lines. Thank you for this. Okay, this is blank. I will take it, move it over here. Cool, of course. Thank you so much. Reducing the sprint duration will create more load on the team. Yes, it may be. And the good part is, now there is always a question that what would be the right duration for a sprint. Now, generally, the perfect timeline for a sprint is 2 weeks. Why 2 weeks? Because there are multiple reasons. Probably this is not the right forum. You can connect with me offline and would be more than happy to explain. But why I'm suggesting bring it down, even if someone was trying to do it in 4 weeks, even if it was not due to COVID, I would have still suggested to bring it down to 2 weeks. But the current situation, it demands precisely 2 weeks. Why so? Because just imagine the way situation is changing. If one organization was following assume hypothetically a 4 weeks iteration, and then the COVID situation happened, everything would be going for a total scattered chaotic situation. So whatever the team had done for probably the first 2-3 weeks, that will go for a loss. Now imagine the kind of situation we are running through: lockdown 1, then 2, then 3 and 4. You never know how things are going to rapidly change. So if we have a longer duration and something happens in between, the loss will be much higher. And we are breaking the risk into smaller chunks. Now talking about the load on the team, it doesn't really add to the load, because the end of the day, when you reduce your timeline for the sprint, you are also cutting down the commitments. So when you're doing your sprint planning, you are also taking up only that amount of work that you can deliver within 2 weeks. It depends. But yes, if the team is absolutely new, some people would argue that if my team is totally new, then it will make sense to have it a longer duration for them to settle down. But I will rather say, if your team is new, go for 1 week's iteration, because 1 week's iteration will give you an opportunity to repeat the same cycle again and again and again in a much shorter span of time. And when you repeat the same cycle more number of times, it makes you even better. So your team will become even more aligned and more comfortable with working in a sprint duration, 1 week sprint duration, when you run the cycle again and again. That is the basic reason for creating or reducing the sprint duration. I hope that kind of answers, but please feel free to connect with me. I would be more than happy to discuss if there are more points to it. So saying that, I think I am pretty much done. If there are any further, I will pass it on to Devika, to you.
So there are a few questions on the GoToWebinar platform, so I'll read those out and you can take them here. What will be the major topics that would take momentum from learning perspective? This is by Priyanka. Hello, Arijit.
Oh, sorry. If you could repeat that question, I missed that.
What will be the major topics that would take momentum from a learning perspective? Says Priyanka, asks Priyanka.
What will be the major topic that will take momentum? So, if you're talking about, see, one thing I can tell you for sure, all the different frameworks that we are getting to see, I am assuming that this question is related to the agile way of working. So if that is the question, in that case, probably we are going to see a lot of changes in the way we have been working. And that would mean that a lot of things are going to change in the current frameworks that we have. So frameworks, whatever we are using, and the few frameworks which are pretty heavy in nature, they will literally have to cut their, some slack, because they really have to become much more leaner. So unless until those frameworks become leaner, it will be very difficult to sustain in this kind of a rapidly changing dynamics. So we would definitely see a lot of changes. Now, from a outside agile way of working, some of the changes that we are bound to see, a lot of focus on analytics. We will see a lot of automation, and automation will gradually become smarter and smarter. So a lot of machine learning will gradually surface up, and those things will gradually take a lot of attention and a lot of visibility.
Okay, shall I go to the next question?
Yes, please.
Okay, one from Jitendra. How to get the desired outcomes from lazy people through servant leadership in remote working?
See, first and foremost is that, um, I mean, if you ask me, I mean, it is difficult to identify someone as lazy, because you see some of the things are inbuilt into our system. So, for example, by very nature, we are probably not lazy. But if we really see that when you get up in the morning, we have a buzzer. So the mobile alarm starts buzzing and we try to snooze it. So that means we are also in a way lazy. But the only reason is we have to dig deep into it, that why that person is probably not as active as the others. And the moment we figure it out, then we should be able to help that individual come out of that so-called laziness and become much more active. Just imagine, I mean, if you are calling someone lazy, you give something to do to that individual which that individual really enjoys. Will that person be lazy anymore? Probably not. So we have to either make the work exciting and interesting for that individual, or probably help him understand what he or she is doing. So when the why becomes very clear to the individual, then I would hope the person would be able to understand what it is and why they are doing so. It is about taking pride in what they do. And once they start taking pride in what they do, they would be able to do so. In Scrum at Scale, or even in License Scrum, there is a concept called hyperproductive team. And in hyperproductive team, we always talk about team happiness. There are ways and means of measuring team happiness. And if we can bring that into the floor, you will see gradually that laziness is eroding from that team.
Okay, one from Prabhakaran. If agile method of SDLC is not applicable for the COVID situation, does the software industry need to frame a new approach?
So first and foremost, see, I mean, SDLC, the diagram we went through, SDLC has not changed since ages. We still do the design, construct, testing, integration, deployment. With the same story is still repeated even today. Only thing is, in agile way of working, that SDLC has been brought into a smaller chunk. We are limiting it within to a small span of time, and that is what the sprint duration is. So nothing is changing. We're still working in the same life cycle that was done. Probably that life cycle has a different name. We used to call it waterfall. We used to call it spiral model, different namings. But today we are still using the same philosophy, but within sprint duration. So none of the industries are going to do anything different, but they are trying to they're trying to adapt this new situation in a different way.
Great. Okay, Arijit, there's one unanswered question on the Kanban board. So could you just open that up?
Okay. Yes. Okay, there were a few, okay, down there. What will be the major topics that would take? Okay, so this is what we just went through. Okay. Are the three modes of agile recommended, or there are others which can be looked like Spotify? Okay, so I just showed three frameworks, and those three frameworks that I showed on the screen, one was Scrum at Scale, one was Less, and one was Safe. Now, Spotify is not a framework. It is like Spotify as an organization, what they followed. Now, what followed had Scrum at the core, and on top of it, they had some of the good practices which they had embedded. Now, we should not really say that it was a Spotify model per se, but it could be something different. It is like we have a habit that whenever we use it, we say that it is Colgate. Same way, Spotify has got its name. But end of the day, there are so many other frameworks like Scrum at Scale, Nexus, Less, Safe. They are all there, but definitely, if you give me an option, I will go for Scrum at Scale because I have seen it working. I have worked with Jeff on that, so I know. And I have also worked on Safe, and probably into 2013 when it was first introduced around in Indian landscape, I went through the training, so I do understand how the model has evolved. So there are specific situations which would demand specific frameworks to work. So based on that, someone as a consultant have to decide what works best, and that is what we have to propose. And you never know that in the coming days, some other frameworks will also show up. There's a question that Scrum guideline, it's good to have Scrum team under one roof, going to change. So yes, I mean, I literally went through that. So true to the wording that you have used. So when we always, I mean, since the beginning, when we talk about Scrum, we always say that Scrum works best when it is a co-located team. Now, that is one of the reason why when the distribution, team distribution and geographical distribution came in, we always said that the geographical distribution can only be done when team is not split across location. As long as team is kept under one location, it is fine. Here we are dealing with the situation today, which has really forced us to think out of the box. So now we are seeing that not team, the entire individuals, each and every individual is now segregated. Under that kind of situation, we are kind of a neutral zone where everyone is dealing with the same problem. No one is having an undue advantage of being at the office, having a greater network access, or having the customer next to him or her. So on that ground, everyone is kind of playing with that, zero advantage. So everyone is at the same ground, and that is where we say that as long as all those teams are connected through some kind of a tooling, they are all good to work. Because what else can we do? We have to deal with the situation as is.
Okay, one question from Arun. How can client or project sponsor mindset be influenced to adapt to post-COVID era to ensure that servant or servant leader and emotional quotation of teams are given more value for better output? So I'll repeat it again. How can client or the project sponsor mindset be influenced to adapt to the post-COVID era to ensure that the servant or leader and to ensure servant or leader and emotional quota of the teams are given more value for better output?
Okay. See, I mean, my take is pretty simple on this. It is like, the customers are also human beings, right? It's like, you and me. So customers, they also understand the situation, and based on that, they respect the way we respond to the situation. So many of the customers, they are themselves dealing with the situation where their own team is kind of segregated. They're not being able to come to work. They're all spread out in different locations. So whenever we share openly, and that is where the openness comes in, one of these Scrum values. If we share it openly with the customer and we also propose that this is the way we are planning to mitigate this kind of a challenge, I don't see any problem with customer not accepting that. And openness, respect, courage, these are the inherent values. And if the customer is not aligned with that, it kind of makes me feel that we should be asking this question that do you really want to follow agile? Do you really want to do it in Scrum? Because we want you also to be part of this. Unless until you are also in this game, I cannot simply run Scrum by my own. It has to be a game where both of us are involved. So here, one discussion point we have seen that not a question, but digital transformation is led by COVID versus company initiative. That is true, very true, because what we have been trying to do for many organizations, we have been trying to guide organization that we should be moving to a digital transformation. COVID has enforced the organization to think in that way, and that is why I was giving that example. Many of the organization which has not moved into cloud yet, probably they are still working on an on-prem kind of an infrastructure. They are really understanding the need to move into cloud, and more organizations are doing so. And if anyone is really having any struggle on that, feel free to reach out. Cloud transformation, cloud migration is something we do at us day in, day out, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. Okay, not a question. Okay, this is the same thing. Effectiveness of co-location versus distributed team due to COVID. I think we just went through it. Yes, I mean, co-location definitely tops the list, but under the current circumstances, we have to deal with what we have. Moving ahead, BCP and disaster recovery plans have to be revised altogether. Must have for this, yes. I mean, it's a very good question because you see, what has happened, it has literally opened a Pandora's box. It has been a segment which we have ignored, probably knowingly, unknowingly. Many organization has been talking about carbon footprint reduction and all, and those exercises have been happening for a long time. But looking into the possibility of pandemics impacting the way of working, that has probably not been in our remotest thought. Yes, Bill Gates actually spoke about it in one of the TED Talks, and probably Bill Gates was notified about this by several of the elite scientists, but it never really, probably, I'm quite sure some of the organization did take some measures, but probably at a mass level, it was not there. So we have to think about this. And just imagine, like today in India, because of the Notebandi, whether it was good or bad, that's a different topic. But because of that kind of digital movement we have been through, although we are stuck at home, most of the transaction we could still carry out. Now, in today's world, when we are working from home, we can still work out because the internet connectivity has really improved by a big margin over the last few years. But probably it is still not at the best possible level because one connection at home is probably being used by the entire household. Children at home are using the same for their classes. Parents at home are using it for their office work. Is probably bandwidth we have is not exactly the best for the work from home kind of a situation. But yes, we have to think and plan on those lines. So let us see what we can do, and hopefully the situation will become even better, and that will help us in planning the BCP and the DRs for sure. Trust and more understanding from leadership, absolutely, fully agree to that. Q&A, of course. How about some of the agile best practices, pair programming? So pair programming is just, you see, at one point of time when I was working with Cognizant, we had a project where we were working in pair programming, and the customer was absolutely particular about it that I only want XP to be done on the ground. Interestingly, the pair programming was not happening with dev and test or dev and dev working next to each other. One developer working in offshore and the other developer working at onshore. They were also pairing. So COVID doesn't really impact how the pairing goes on. So we are still doing the same. But yes, I mean, we have to have the guts to take the first step about doing the pairing because many of the times we get scared that pairing would only mean two people doing one person job. So we have to get rid of those kind of myths and misconceptions. Once we do so, then hopefully we will be in a better stage. Does new work culture enforce more documentation and detailed reporting? Well, interesting one. More documentation, no, but of course it does create a situation where we need to ensure that we are providing enough information so that when that piece of code or application goes to another person who has not seen it before, gets enough information to work with it. So there are tools, and if you're using even in so for example in DevOps parlance, we always talk about tools like Javadoc or GhostDoc. If you're using those kind of tools, it will help you to have your documentation done in a much easier fashion. And later on, you can create your help document out of it very easily. Similarly, if you're working with Atlassian set of tools, you can use Confluence. That can also help you to create a lot of help material on the fly if you're using it right with Jira. We have to use tools, but as the saying goes, a fool with the tool is still a fool. So we have to use the tools smartly. If we do it well, then we can get around this problem diligently. And there are smart ways of doing so, trust me. So I'm quite sure you will be able to do it. Spotify model is more hypothetical. Yes, correct. We went through that. Very right. Agree to the individuals interaction with. Thank you so much. Change of leadership, more productivity, more time on system, more monitoring. Yes, leadership, they do need to change. I mean, I would say this change, not only due to COVID, I always recommend this change, that leadership should always look for productivity, but leadership should also step out of the way. And if you have seen Dan Pink's video, I come to it again and again. I really love that video. So it really talks about the Atlassian example where the leadership literally steps out of the way of the team and gives them self-autonomy, drive innovation. Because you see, with 100% utilization, innovation doesn't happen. So we have to let leadership get into that state. So we also have to do our bits to bring in that level of confidence to the leadership so that they can give that to the team, to give them more flexibility, more autonomy, so that the team can feel that purpose, and then they will feel excited and they will not see that laziness that we were talking about earlier. So I think that clears the board that we have.
Yes, I think that's great. So quickly before we sign off, just one or two more polls to get your feedback on the webinar. So I hope that, the style of not just having a presentation, but actually having a discussion and a Q&A round and other things was, added value to you guys and was a little different than the usual sessions that happen. So I hope that was nice. And if you guys have any other feedback that you would like to give, you can always email me, send in any questions even now before we log off. And Arijit, we have one more question that's come up with Jitendra. How will the agile coach's role change in this situation?
So you see, I mean, first and foremost, I have pretty different views about things. So people often point it out to me. So when you talk about agile coaches, I only think that agile coaches are literally highly paid scrum masters. So I don't really see that the role changes. So it is like, on an ongoing basis, just take you and me for the matter. How you used to look at, around us, that has changed. So just imagine, and one of the example that I wanted to discuss, but probably lack of time, you see, delivery person from Flipkart or Amazon who delivers the parcel to us every day, the way we used to look at them pre-COVID, now when we look at them post-COVID, perception has literally changed. When I look at them, I really see that they are doing such a fabulous job, taking such a huge risk, but they are trying to ensure that I get my delivery on time. It creates and it forces me to have a lot of extra respect than what I had earlier. Now, if I take myself as a Scrum Master, when I see that my team, who are all scattered, they don't get to see each other, they all have their own personal challenges at the work front and the home front, because work from home, WFH may also mean that work for home. So we are not only doing from home, but we are also doing for home, and we are balancing both each other. So there is a lot of self-respect and mutual respect that is going to float in. How we are going to deal with it, that will differ from individual to individual, but I think it all starts with showing that respect, empathy that should come in. So I don't really see that these role changes, but the situation would demand the person on the individual to be much more open and deal and accept situation in a much with an open heart. That is the only thing that I would say.
All right. Thanks so much, Arijit, for taking out the time and taking us through this wonderful webinar and the topic, which is supremely relevant at this moment. And I think all of us are actually wondering, how is it going to be changing and what is going to happen over the next, years now. So on all the participants, thank you so much for being here. It was lovely to have you. We had some very interesting discussion points, some very nice questions. And if you guys found this interesting, want something like this done for your organization, or even if you want any other sort of Scrum training or Agile trainings for your teams, for your organizations, you can always drop in on the emails on your screen. And we hope you had a good time. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Arijit.
Thank you so much.